I mean, it's like, women can change an embryo to a boy, but the women can't raise boys to be men. It's like men need the wolf pack. We need to sort of like support each other. I think it's a lot of men are missing, tribe. There's no tribe of men. The older men aren't taking and that's not just the dads, right? It's the elders. The older men aren't taking the responsibility to raise the boys, and the lack of initiation, right? There's a lot of men that just have not been initiated. So this lack of initiation, kind of keeps or withholds men in this adolescent psychology. A
Yeah.
lot of men are running around as boys, and there's no real clear initiation of becoming a man. And you see that, you start seeing that, especially with kids that are like, 12 years old, that really need like the men,
Right.
and their dads in their lives.
Welcome to Far Out with Faust, everybody. I am Faust Chicho, and today I'm joined by my friend Doug Miller. Let me tell you about Doug and the awesome things he's been up to. Doug is a psychologist, primarily working with children in inner city schools in Los Angeles since around 2000, so almost a quarter of a century. He's worked in schools in South Central, LA, Santa Monica, Malibu, Culver City, West Hollywood, all across that land, La La Land. As a psychologist, Doug conducts psychological assessments, evaluations, and provides ongoing therapy and crisis intervention, educational planning, and consultation with educators and family. Additionally, Doug is a former performer and fire artist and is the mastermind behind the global entertainment company Zen Arts. Zen Arts is committed to creating immersive environments that transport guests into a world of wonder and enchantment. You guys got to wait till you check out. We're going to be rolling some video of some of Doug's incredible performance pieces. He draws inspiration from various cultures, eras, artistic movements. His events are meticulously designed to stimulate the senses and ignite the imagination. Opulent masquerade balls to futuristic cyber extravaganzas, each event is flawlessly crafted, and it leaves a lasting impression on all who attend. Dude, this is such a wild combination. Thank you so much for beaming in, my friend. It's great to have you.
You too. Thanks for having me.
So, Doug, where do we begin, brother? How did we go from an inner city psychologist to this incredible company that you started that does these amazing works, and like the makeup and everything that you guys are doing is just, the artistry is just masterful. It's so impressive. And it was so cool to meet you. Full disclosure, Doug and I have mutual friends. We met at Arcadia, at Aubrey Marcus's Arcadia 2 weeks ago now.
Yeah, I think it was about 2 weeks
ago. 2 weeks ago now. And we hit it off, of course. And here we are. So, Doug, take us back to the beginning, brother. How did we get to where we are?
The first thing is everyone thinks that my lives are so different, right? It's like, okay, you live this dual life of being a psychologist, and then you have this sort of like performing arts circus. And it's like, well, there's not a lot of difference between 5-year-olds in some capacity and artists, right? So there's a lot that's aligned, I think, and then just in the energy field of children and artists alike, there's a lot of like alignment there. But for me, I grew up in Joshua Tree. I was born in Joshua Tree, California, raised in Joshua Tree. And, this is pre-internet days too. And out there, if we weren't rock climbing or biking around or motorbiking or riding horses, we were making music. So music was a big part of my life there. And I started playing music professionally when I was probably 13 years old and played jazz professionally. And then we had a couple of other bands, like a ska band, and played in more of an alternative rock band. And so music was a big thing. And I was on the younger side of the guys I played with. And most of them went off to study at Juilliard and other universities in music. And I don't know, I think it wasn't the path I wanted to go down at the time. I think when I was graduating high school and considering universities, I didn't really feel the call to want to be a struggling or professional musician for the rest of my life. So I left music and I went off to study philosophy. And I got a scholarship at Pepperdine in Malibu.
Nice.
I mean, I had lots of opportunities university wise, but I think coming from the desert, the beach was like super attractive to me. And the music program wasn't very great at Pepperdine. So it wasn't going to be a distraction either. And I studied philosophy there. And after philosophy, got into psychology, went to graduate school in psychology. I mean, long story short, I kind of found the art of fire dancing through some friends who brought me to Burning Man, which I had never heard of and had no preconception of. Basically, just got dropped off there. And
Oh
with some
man.
and I mean, not on my own, but
Oh
someone
yeah, I
took me to
know.
Burning Man, literally like as a tent, camping in a tent, in like a van, like a small van or a passenger van and a tent. And we camped at a camp, but I never knew it. I didn't really know anything about it. I wasn't really even very prepared, but I had an amazing time. And at that point I was like, you know what, I'm going to fire dance at Burning Man, next year. And within that year, I just learned fire dancing and got pretty good at that. And then that kind of got me engulfed in the world of underground circus and Burning Man.
Mhm.
And then that kind of spawned into Cirque du Soleil and other artists like Madonna and Beyonce. It just kind of like took off once I sort of found a vision of what I wanted to create. But
Mm.
I think, for me, it was like I was always going to be an artist. I'm always going to be an artist. It's just the medium changes. So whether it was a saxophone or it was, fire dancing, now it's like I find more fulfillment in sort of creating the whole thing, art directing,
Mhm.
dabbling in the music, the fashion, the designs, the fabrication, the choreography, and sort of working on more of a directorial and artistic creative director role. That just seems to
Yeah.
be where I'm at now. But that's kind of how I ended up here.
That's that's amazing, man. I had a feeling as soon as I read about the company that the seed was planted in Burning Man at some point, and I was like, I wonder what year that was. That's incredible, though. I mean,
2008 ish.
2008. It was that's amazing. So as you began this company, and I'm sure be I'm sure you were somewhat a regular attendee at Burning Man, and being a fire dancer at Burning Man, and being among all these performers, you probably met some really like-minded and incredible artists and people to just kind of create this vision and then see it manifest. It must have been so incredible. I mean, that's fucking amazing. It's really cool.
Yeah, like I had dinner last night with a friend, Rob Bushholtz, who's a big sculpture artist and probably has built, I think, the biggest sculpture pieces at Burning Man. He's a steel worker and does a lot of mosaic steel and projection stuff. And so he's designed these structures that are 100 feet high, dandelions or cherry blossoms or, daisies. And there was one year I'd probably been like 5 or 6 years into Zen Arts, and we had done so well. We'd been all over the world. I mean, probably 20 countries and doing different shows. And I think, what's been nice is that this opportunity to be able to collaborate on multiple levels with different artists all over the world has kind of been awesome. And that this vehicle, this sort of platform I created has allowed for that. Like, I think my first Burning Man was 2008, and I had performed probably the following year as a fire dancer throughout Burning Man. But 2015, I think it was 15, we did a show where I brought out like probably 35 performers. A lot of them had never been to Burning Man before. Some of them in Cirque du Soleil and other theater shows throughout the world. And we produced a stage in a camp, and it was really spectacular. I mean, it was like a full-fledged show that we had did like 3 times throughout Burning Man. And there was there was a sculpture piece that year called Cherish, which was like a probably, I don't know, 50 to 100 feet high steel sculptured mosaic cherry blossoms that have been sticking out of the ground. It's something you probably recognize from Burning Man
Yeah.
photos. And the artist for that was Rob Bushholtz, who I just had dinner with last night. But, I remember riding up to that piece, and he was talking about the piece. I was like an art tour. Different art cars were there, and people were there from the media, and he was speaking about the piece, his inspiration. I got up to him and just said, dude, this piece is amazing. I'm really impressed. And we kind of hit it off. And it just had been that I found out later that he'd actually done some fabrication on the stage that we had for the show that year as well. So we were already sort of collaborating without knowing it. And we've been kind of best friends ever since. And since then, we produced sculpture pieces with him, in several different places throughout the world. And I had dinner with him last night, and we're working on a project at Art Basel in Miami coming up in a couple of weeks. And
Nice.
yeah, it's been really nice to be able to meet other artists and creatives through this process of this company that I created. It's been nice.
What's
And
been the
Burning Man's been
most?
a huge piece of that.
I know I know I've seen his artwork because what you're describing, I remember seeing pictures of it. I think it was before. It was definitely before my day, but before I discovered Burning Man. But I do remember that piece you're talking about, and I think I know a few of his other pieces too. People don't understand the kind of. I mean, you can see pictures of it, but if you've never been, if you've never stood on the playa and gazed out at the visual artistry, and there's a sense of wonder and awe that comes with it. And what you
Mm-hmm.
guys are doing is bringing that same sense of wonder and awe to the kind of the rest of the world, which is, I think, just such a fucking cool job. What would you say is like the
Yeah.
most? What was like the most kind of, because I'm sure people have like different tastes and they have different ideas about what they want to do for their event. And you guys really custom tailor everything, like right down to the detail of the makeup. And I'm wondering what was the I'm sure some of it you can't talk about, but what was the craziest kind of request that you guys had that you had to put together? You're like, I don't fucking know. This is what they want. So this is what we're going to
Yeah, yeah. I mean, everything's kind of crazy within our world. It's sort of
do.
like
I bet.
everything's customized. It's like right now we're working on a wedding in India that's going to happen in January, and I think there are 3,000 guests coming to this. It's a 4-day event. Indian weddings are a whole thing. And
Yeah.
3,000 people at a wedding. I mean, I've never even never imagined such a huge wedding, and we're creating a lot of custom pieces and costumes and creative show ideas throughout these 4 days. And everything's just so customized. I mean, it could be like, this is a garden theme and it's a jungle theme and we're creating, jungle characters, or it could be something on the sexier side, but it's all sort of a nice, fun challenge. And generally there's not like a lot of lead time on these things either.
How many weeks you
I mean,
get
we've got
typically?
I mean, sometimes it could be just a couple of weeks. Sometimes it could be months. But like this wedding we're working on now is in January. We got the call on this like 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks
Mm.
ago, and it's been Diwali, there. So we haven't really done anything in a week. And yeah, we've got now through the holidays to try and throw something together. Or I'm basically putting together a big project for Art Basel, where we're going to do probably 5 days of shows, and we're still putting together the pitch deck for that now. And so
Mm.
we probably won't even finalize things and some funding for the next few days. So sometimes it's a lot of last minute stuff.
Yeah.
But when you've got access to some of the best artists and talent in the world, um, and budgets, when the budgets sort of match too, it's easy to put these things, or it's easier to put these things together
I bet.
with all hands on deck.
I bet. So will you fly to India to oversee the 4 days? I guess you'll have to, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I have a whole team too. It
Yeah.
depends. I mean, I can't attend every event, but I try to. I mean, that's a challenge with a company like this, is that when it's so creative driven, and there's someone at the helm of that creative vision, sometimes it's not really easy to sort of let somebody else
Yeah.
deliver that. But I'm pretty fortunate to have a pretty good team of people too. But it's hard. I'm still doing the psychology thing also, so it's hard for me just to sort of take off and be gone for weeks at a time.
Yeah.
In
I
India,
bet.
even to go for 4 days, it's going to be like a week and a half trip.
Yeah. The travel alone is, talking about 2 days each way. um, so,
Exactly.
so
Yeah.
how has this work this incredible production team that you have created, this visionary thing, how has it affected you with your work as an inner city school psychologist, and what would you say is like, this is a very, very big concern, and I'm sure that you're well aware, of kind of where our children are going with all the indoctrination that's happening and the technology, the addiction that's happening with technology. How has this part of your life complemented or helped inform the other?
Um, well, for me, it's like I don't know if I could really exist with just one world, in the sense of like, like with Zen Arts, um, I get a lot of opportunity to be an entrepreneur, to be creative, to travel, to make money. I'm my own boss. I get to everything is just so creative and moving all the time and fluid. And it's there's a lot of there's funding involved, but at the same time, I've got to run a business. I've got to be a CEO and handle all of the things that it takes to be a CEO of a corporation. But at the same time, with psychology, I don't really run a business. I'm not really running a practice in the sense of like I'm not marketing myself. I'm not. There's no exchange of money. I see kids and families and go into schools, and there's no one's writing. I mean, there's these
Right.
families and parents aren't paying me to do that, and so for me, that's like the contribution side of what's important to me, and it's important to give back and to contribute. And I guess for me, at least internally, it's nice to know that I'm not dependent on either of these worlds. That like I can, I I have the opportunity to provide and give back and contribute, and then I don't have to make, because it's not a big paycheck being a psychologist in the schools. It's
Yeah.
certainly a
No.
bit more than being a teacher, but it's not it's not big money. But I'm not having to survive on that per se. So
Mhm.
it's nice for me to have other outlets, so that I think in one sense they're both working together to fulfill my needs, and my visions, and make me feel like I'm, there's some purpose in my
Oh
life.
yeah.
The the two worlds don't necessarily, like, they're not colliding. I mean, there was a time a few years ago I dabbled a little bit in doing some drug rehab therapy with fire dancing, and I thought I could kind of maybe implement some of this together. It doesn't. I haven't really been doing that. I mean, we hire children, but it's in a different capacity than the
Right.
children I'm working with. But in the biggest sense for me internally, the worlds work together for me to feel fulfilled, and to also give the right attention to either purpose. I
Right.
think if I was just doing entertainment, there would be something missing from my life. I'd have to be doing something with charity or giving back or some philanthropy in some way.
Yeah.
Um, and if I was just working with kids in the schools, I think I'd be financially stressed and overwhelmed emotionally. I wouldn't have the creative outlet that I have now. And how would I meet
Totally.
those needs?
Totally. Yeah. And what would you say is like the biggest? I mean, I imagine when you get into South Central and some of the inner cities, it can be pretty dark, for some of those kids. And unfortunately, the system is, especially the public school system, in a lot of places we know is not. I mean, it's failing in a lot of ways. And you're having to navigate that. What would you say, like, particularly in the last few years, is the biggest challenge for these kids coming up? And in general, what age kids are you generally counseling?
Yeah, I mean, I'm working with all ages. I mean, I right now it's primarily like age 2 to probably 13, so preschool
Mm.
to late elementary school. But I've worked, I was a psychologist at a high school in South Central for a few years, and I've worked in middle schools. I mean, I've sort of worked at all levels. The challenge with the high schools and the older kids is that they tend to already have, like, there's just so much that's already happened to them. They've been so
Mm.
impacted, and they can be very transient. They could be dropping out, running with gangs. There's just a lot to do. It's harder to come into that situation
Oh
and
my
really
God.
have impact and have some consistency. But with the little kids, some of those risk factors and signs are already there. So it's like you can already sort of precipitate some of these things. But I mean, I think some of the biggest things are, it's like you said, technology. A lot of these kids are so slave to technology and so addicted to technology. that they're missing like human interaction and connection, family support, mentorship. I think a lot of kids don't have proper mentors, role models. Um, I've been doing a lot of work in my own life with men. I've got a men's group that I participate in, and we've been doing a lot of work with each other as men. And I think even with the boys, a lot of boys are missing that appropriate sort of male connection in their life. And so, boys are being raised by their mothers, or
Mm-hmm.
dad's absent. So, mom is still running the household. So there's a lack of masculinity in different ways, whether the mom's raising the boys on their own, or the dads are sort of absent. I mean, I can't tell you how many boys I work with that are, could be age 12. If I ask them what their dads do, they don't even know what their dads do.
Right.
They can't even tell me. Like, what is, they don't know what their dads do. There's a disconnection.
I
And
mean,
so,
there's a general disconnection. I think technology is partially to blame, but then you also have the rampant divorce rates, and especially when you get to the inner city, there's virtually no father to speak of. But I love that you're in a men's group. So many guy. I'm actually looking for a men's group, and I have a few friends who have circles and have these amazing groups, but they're kind of all over the world. Like one's he's in Egypt. I don't. He's like, join my men's group. I was like, is everyone going to be speaking English? I was like, well, I'd be like the odd guy out. He's like, no, it's virtual, but it's just for guys, particularly guys close to our generation. It can be an incredible experience, and so healing. And a lot of these kids that you're
mhm.
talking about are probably going to need something of that sort to get over some of the trauma they've been through. It's challenging.
Yeah, I mean, I think with the boys, I mean, it's like, women can change an embryo to a boy, but the women can't raise boys to be men. It's like men need the wolf pack. We need to sort of like support each other. I think it's a lot of men are missing, tribe. There's no tribe of men. The older men aren't taking and that's not just the dads, right? It's the elders. The older men aren't taking the responsibility to raise the boys, and the lack of initiation, right? There's a lot of men that just have not been initiated. So this lack of initiation, kind of keeps or withholds men in this adolescent psychology. A
Yeah.
lot of men are running around as boys, and there's no real clear initiation of becoming a man. And you see that, you start seeing that, especially with kids that are like, 12 years old, that really need like the men,
Right.
and their dads in their lives.
Yeah. And the role modeling, you cannot be, the importance of it cannot be overstated. So when you're talking about the lack of a role model in general, then the children, these young kids they're looking towards, that's when you see them looking towards, some of the people on TV, and it's
Mhm.
because it's a natural thing to begin to imitate, behavior. I mean, and that's why as a parent, you know, it's Doug, I'll tell you a funny story. When I learned that my parents were supposed to be my emotional role model, and that I think my son was about maybe a year or 2 years old, and that it was going to be on me to be an emotional role model for my children, and they were going to learn from me. And I was like thinking about who I learned from, and I was fucking catatonic for about 48 hours. I was like, I am so fucked. I have so much to do if I'm gonna turn this around and get through this, because there was there was no emotional role modeling in my house, but you don't know that until you learn what a functional family is supposed to constitute. And then you're
Mhm.
like, are there any functional families? And I guess there are a few, because there's a few great books written about what a functional family is supposed to look like, but I had no idea. I was an actor.
Mhm.
I was an artist in New York City, and I was having a lot of trouble being vulnerable in my craft, and playing roles that involved me to have, like, this open heartedness and vulnerability and showing that, in front of people on a stage or in front of a camera. And I was like, I wonder why I can't feel those things. Then you
Mm.
learn the hard way about how that physiological conditioning of not feeling happens to a person through trauma. And, thank God I took many, many years of getting help and reconditioning my body, to be able to feel those things again. But like something like a men's circle, it can be so valuable, and I went through a lot of it for many, many years so that I could be a better role model for my children. Hopefully
Mm.
I've turned the corner on that since they're 10 and 12 now.
Mm.
Yeah. Crazy, man. Crazy.
Yeah, so I think it's good for men to sort of block the exits for men. I think as men, we want to tend to like run away or isolate or retreat, or at least that's what we've sort of like been taught or learned. And the reality is that like we're meant to be part of a pack. We need to like bind together, and the lone wolf doesn't survive. The only way the lone wolf survives is if he finds a pack. Um, and so I think it's important, for men to be supporting each other and blocking those exits for each other. It's starting to happen more. I mean, I do see more men's groups popping up, but I think, women tend to meet more often. Women tend to get together and talk and gather and
Mm-hmm.
do things with each other. And the men, often men's way of gathering has been like a sports game or a bar, you know, some social environment where there's distractions, and it's not really like men getting together to really like do the work together and
Yeah.
diving into the dark shadows, and supporting each other and having goals and holding each other accountable, and really kind of like talking through the stories and the mythology, and what we could be doing to be supporting each other as men. Yeah, I think that's resurging now maybe, but
Yeah.
men are often been sort of alone. And I think that's been very difficult for men.
Very difficult. And I think it's part of the reason why the world looks the way it does right now, unfortunately. This patriarchal system we're in, full of very, very wounded adult children, men, and
Mm.
people always say, and I stand by this. I do not believe the world would look the way it does if it was run by women. I just don't. I don't believe it. I know women are capable of all these things too, especially the ones who have been, through the feminist movement and been masculinized, in the
Right.
corporate dogma of this country and this world. But the maternal instinct, would not. You just would not see what's happening in this world right now, and it comes from a lot of unhealed motherfuckers who have come into the
Mm.
highest positions of power. Who are victims of some of the worst abuse you can imagine. I mean, fucking Donald Rumsfeld and Dick fucking Cheney, their job for like over a decade was in the CIA, and their job was to make sure the nastiest, most atrocious shit happening in the CIA was remain compartmentalized. Okay, that's how you get ahead in DC. You oversee the
Mm.
nastiest, most atrocious shit a government agency does, and you eventually become vice president, and then you can start your own atrocities like fucking the Iraq War and 9/11 and all that shit. I mean, that's the society that we're living in, and it's unfortunately someone who has healed themselves, would never allow themselves to be put in that position because they would have compassion and empathy for the people who are being victimized. But yeah,
Mm.
don't get me going about that.
Wow. Well, I mean, I think you're right. There needs to be more community. There needs to be more like supporting each other. Like we're just not meant to be like on our own, and men and women. I mean, I deal with a lot of single moms that I've even had them say to me, like they're losing their femininity and having to become more masculine just in the role as being a mom raising a
Yeah,
boy, let alone like in their jobs, right? And so women that are in job positions where
yeah,
it's sort of like more male dominated, so the women are losing their femininity and becoming more masculine.
and they don't realize it because
Yeah,
it's
if we
been
were separating,
marketed to them as a feminist movement, right? And it's very clever
Mm.
marketing, but it's a trick.
I mean, the
It's
feminist movement was bad for all of us. It was bad for men and women. I don't think it helped. I mean, I don't.
no,
I think the feminist movement was just, it just hasn't. It's been horrible, and
yes,
we're seeing that now. Where it's like women aren't in their power and men are in their power, and it's like the view of man is like Hans Christian Andersen's
hmm
view of man. It's like, well, what happened to where's the hairy man? Where's like the strong man? Where's the masculine man?
there's a
And I,
shortage.
and I think women are missing that too. So they've assumed that role, right? So you have women that are becoming more masculine because the men are more feminine or soft. And so that the women are stepping into their masculinity, not even wanting to do that, but just
Yeah,
because that's what makes sense, right?
it's a mind fuck. And it was designed to be so, uh, sadly. But I mean, and Kelly Brogan. I don't know if you ever heard of Kelly Brogan. She's been on Rogan. She's been on. She has. I mean, she's been highly censored for even since before the days that censorship became, kind of a mainstream regular thing. She was being censored because she was an MD who was speaking out against the pharmaceutical industry, having been a psychiatrist and then realizing what was happening. And anyway, that's a quick way to get censored. Start talking about against the pharmaceutical industry out loud when you have a high level of education and you're a doctor. But she talks about this a lot, really profoundly, and how much of a mindfuck it is. When you're taught that, because she was rip roaring feminist. I mean, this woman was loud and outspoken, and all for and being a psychiatrist and in a position to prescribe medication, and there was a lot going on there. But she talks about how everything twisted. Like you're they're taught and conditioned to believe that a man who assumes that traditional masculine role is overbearing. When part of them, there's an instinct there that craves that, but then they're taught that's an encroachment of their rights. Or it's somehow objectifying them. And she goes on about this, and she does a lot of work now to try to get women to realize where their true power lies. And it's not in a fucking corporate suit necessarily. It's not in like Kamala Harris is the perfect example comes to mind. Talk about a completely masculinized woman. She rose to power as a litigator because she was completely fucking ruthless, dude. She was
Mm.
cutthroat, and everyone feared her. She was ruthless, and she knew how to use her sex and her cruelty, and that's how she got ahead. But she's a perfect example of like the feminist movement. There's the epitome of it. And I'm not saying
Mm.
anything. Listen, women, I am all for equal rights. And the ERA, the only people who are keeping it from being passed are Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. It's crazy, man. Because they ratified that amendment, and then they won't pass it because it would change the laws. Fucking,
Mm.
and women don't even realize it never passed. It's crazy, Doug. It's crazy.
Well, I think I think we have to understand too. It's not like we're not. I don't know. I'm not for women not having rights, the
Yeah.
same rights that men have, but I think there's definitely a certain polarity generally between the masculine and the feminine. And like for me, it's like I prefer to be with a woman who's feminine in nature, um, and I'm just more of a masculine man. It's like I like the polarity of that, and I think it works kind of like on multiple levels where the masculine doesn't really work for me. Like I've tried to be with masculine women. It doesn't really make sense for me. I
Yeah.
prefer, and that's not submissive. It's not, it's just more about, that feminine energy that's just so much more soft and kind and loving and nurturing, you know?
Yeah. And there's a magnetism that goes along with it, and people tend to find a balance for them when they're operating from a heart center. When you're operating from an idea, that's when you often get in trouble and find yourself in a relationship that is not functioning or working because you had an idea of what you wanted instead of listening to what your heart is telling you is for you.
Mm.
But And then you see there are some men who are naturally more effeminate or have that kind of energy. And I have many friends who fall into that category, and I have many friends who are homosexual, who fall into that category, and women as well. And I'm totally cool with them. Like I
Mhm.
have no problem with anyone's preference, and I'm all for absolutely equal, rights. There's just no question. There should be no question about that. I think these issues are often used, by the political parties to create outrage and galvanize their base, and so that there is something they can always depend on to divide people. Because otherwise, wouldn't it just be easy to make the laws so that everything's equal and then call it a day? I mean, couldn't we do that in one
Mhm.
day? Just change it so it's all equal under the law, right? I
Yeah.
mean, but they don't want to. They don't
I
really
mean,
want to.
I work in I work in West Hollywood, so I work with like, which is has a large gay community. I work with a lot of children, and a lot of, and these, some of these children have same sex parents, or they've been birthed in vitro, like a lot of different things. And it's interesting to see how kids sort of perceive homosexuality, lesbianism, gay. It's just like they're just taking in whatever they've been taught. Like it's like for me, it's like okay, I have these conversations with these kids of like, oh, do you have two dads? I have two moms. Yeah, my mom's a lesbian. Um, I don't have a dad. I have a mom. It's just kind of like if we weren't teaching our children that they're, and I understand that the gay community needs to sort of like also be strong and support each other and kind of fight against all this discrimination
Certainly.
that has been sort of affecting the gay community. But at the same time, it's like why can't we just teach our children to just love and just be
Yeah.
kind and have partnerships and relationships in whatever capacity you want? Like, why do we have to compartmentalize it? Because it just reinforces the prejudice, right?
Hmm.
And the racism and the discrimination. It's just like kind of like, well, if we, why do we have to compartmentalize it? But at the same time, it's like even within the gay community,
Yeah.
there's generally more masculine and feminine polarity, right? It's like the gays. There's a reason why a lot of gays have a top and a bottom.
Yeah.
Right? It's like it's not so different in like that we appreciate the polarity. I think, and it's not to say like masculine, feminine makes doesn't work, but I think for me at least, it makes more sense to have that polarity that we all have masculine, feminine energy, but obviously, at least for me, I identify more with the masculine than the
Yeah.
feminine. So if I were gay, I would be a top. I mean,
Yeah.
so I don't know that it matters whether the sex of the person is male or feminine, female. As much for me, at least, it is that polarity of masculine,
It
and feminine
really
energy.
shouldn't matter. And the truth is that homosexuality is just a part of humanity. You know what I'm saying? I'm not one of these people who believes that there's anything inherently wrong with sex or hetero or homosexuality. I mean, I'm not religious in any way. Not, I don't know if I ever truly was, but um, I also, you know, being an actor and having played a homosexual person, you know, and being friends and close with many people who are, they all say the same thing. Like it wasn't a surprise. You know what I mean? It's something they always knew from the time
Right.
that they were kids. Like, and I know when I was young, I was trying to like I laugh at my kids because I was like, dude, when I was your age, all I was trying to do was get this girl behind a tree so I could kiss her. And he was like, my 12-year-old's like, really? And I'm like, yeah, man, it was my mission in life. And I succeeded, I think, right around your age. I was 12. I got Teresa to sneak behind this tree at recess and kiss me. It was awesome. He was like, ew. I'm like, no, man, you don't even know. We had different priorities then. I was exposed to a lot of things I probably shouldn't have been, but I don't even know where the hell I was going with that. But I guess
I
my
think that's
point is
about the
like,
same age that I first like started kissing girls behind like the school yard. It's probably around 12.
yeah,
Probably something all right.
yeah. And I knew when I knew, but by the time I was 10 years old, I was, and it was so young because I had an older brother who, was not responsible with what he brought home and what I was exposed to. It was the 80s. So there's a lot of stuff that was inappropriate for a 9-year-old kid to view, but mind blowing stuff. um,
Yeah.
but I guess my point is like in a society that was not being run by people hell bent on keeping this population divided and distracted, it would be as simple as it is. It would just be, well, you know, Johnny likes Johnny's he likes other guys the same way you like other
Mm.
girls. Oh, okay. And I'm sure Johnny will find someone, who likes other guys too, and that's how it's always been. It's just crazy to me how labels are used to keep people
Mm.
from, from a true community and themselves and their own hearts. And even among these communities, particularly among some of these communities, they ramp up the labels because they know it will cause division and outrage and isolation. So I mean, it's a mess, but it can be cleaned up so simply with different philosophy.
Mm. Yeah. Well, you probably know as a dad too. You see what your children are picking up on and how they sort of suck and are sponging.
Hmm.
Whatever your views are and what your conversation is, and if it's not even you, then it's the media, right? Like I don't, I know, I can't imagine when I grew up as a kid, there was just no internet, right? I mean, we barely. I can even remember when I was really little, we had like a satellite dish in the backyard, and we would be able to move it around, and we'd get like maybe a station or two,
Yeah,
So it was like
we had
there was
antennas
like
and shit.
little. Yeah, exactly. So, and then like we go to Blockbuster and maybe rent movies or something, but the access to media was not anywhere near what it is now. Like the amount of influence, right? I mean, I also grew up where there were no billboards. There was very little marketing and media exposure, really, other than what you would see at a grocery store,
Yeah,
or maybe catch on a commercial on TV. And we didn't even watch that much TV. And
yeah,
there was no cell phones, there was no internet, so like that amount of information just wasn't coming at us. And now
yeah.
it's like it's coming at all of us, right, all the time. It's just the amount of media and the exposure and the influence, and it's just, I don't know, I couldn't imagine what that would be like as a 5-year-old or a 10-year-old
My
or a
God.
12-year-old. It's hard as an adult, right, to deal with all of this.
And it's a bombardment. It's a true bombardment because the LED screen, most people don't realize that that's a pulse. That's a it's like I don't know how fast it's actually pulsing to create and the higher up in resolution we go, the more it just gets and people don't realize. And look, I'm a parent, and I remember, you know, the first time, when and we realized that it was like I read an article or something, but my son was 4, and then we had my younger son was 1, and you listen, when you have a kid who is unruly, and then you give him a device, and all of a sudden he's not unruly anymore, that is a very positive reinforcement for a parent, and a very simple
Mm.
solution to the biggest challenge of parenting, and that is how to work with and keep your child at an equilibrium, so that but giving them that phone is like I mean, what you do to their minds is just, I still can't believe that more parents either they're in denial about what the science that's come out about how damaging this is to their processing centers, or
Mm.
they just they can't deal with the stress, and they just give the phone up. Because I see you see these kids are like 2, and they got that phone clutched, and the parents are just bringing it, and I'm like, man, are you in trouble? Give it 3 years, you're in trouble, man. Like
Right.
when they're exposed that young,
Yeah, I see it all the time. Parents giving the iPad in front of the kid. Just like it could be at a restaurant, it
yeah,
could be out in public, wherever it is. Probably at home, it's happening too, right? Where it's like, okay, like you give them the iPad, they're watching something, it just keeps them busy, and you can kind of go about whatever it is you're doing. But you're right. It's
yeah,
like it's just not good to be having our kids, sucked to these screens. I mean, even myself. I mean, I'm checking my phone all day long. I'm on the computer all day
yeah,
long. It's like even if I'm traveling, I could be in Bali in the rainforest somewhere, and I've got my laptop with me somewhere nearby. It's like there's always got to be some internet access.
yeah,
Now it's like we're flying around with portable satellite internet connections, and we can have internet wherever we are in the world. And it's been good in some ways. In other ways, we're so attached to all this technology.
Yeah,
I think it's taken us away from like ourselves and God, the earth, human interaction and
totally.
connection.
There's no way it's not, because it's not a, it's not a natural thing. And the, the moment you get cut off from your cell phone, and your anxiety starts to rise, like even if you go someplace that doesn't have cell phone reception and you're like, oh shit, wait a minute, you know what I mean? Like life used to be like this. You don't necessarily need that. Life is not gonna. It may feel like life is like there could be an emergency, and maybe you're in that rare situation where there actually could be, but for the most part, that's just the addiction, going off the moment you lose connection. The biggest problem, what parents need to understand is, you reset the pleasure centers in the brain of these kids, and then you put them in a classroom, or even with each other, and they're like, this, where is the device, like I thought we were going to hang out, and then because this is the ultimate dopamine release, nothing they can do together, or that they've ever learned anyway, comes close. And so you got to like withdraw, and take it away from them and let them go through their withdrawal. Keep getting them out inside, get their focus opened and in nature, and let them plug back into what's real, and reset the pleasure centers. It's the only way, to do it, or else these kids, man, they're gonna wreak. And I see them, they're gonna be trouble. No impulse control, no social interaction to draw on as they get into school, and it's just it's a bad plan. But let's go far out, Doug. Talk to me about. Tell me if you've had any experience, like, I usually have a lot of talk of disclosure and UFOs and ET phenomenon on my podcast, and I love to ask my guests, if they've had, experiences, like I was in a plant ceremony. I had this incredible experience with these mantis beings who I had invited to have this communication with. But I'm wondering what your understanding and belief about all that is, and if you've ever had an experience.
I don't know if I've had any specific like UFO or extraterrestrial experiences, but I've definitely like, explored energy at different levels, and have sort of like, been, I mean, growing up in Joshua Tree, I mean, we were doing psychedelics when we were 15, I mean, I think I did my first peyote ceremony at 12,
Oh wow.
and we had a house in Sedona, and we did a lot of spent a lot of time in different Indian reservations
Oh
and Native
cool.
Americans. And so like, I mean, for us, like on a Friday night, even in high school, we'd have a bonfire and we would do LSD or
Yeah.
mushrooms. There weren't like other drugs, like things like ecstasy didn't exist. There was no like, there's, I mean,
Yeah.
at least within the kids I was with, amphetamine wasn't really a thing. There wasn't like cocaine or amphetamine.
Yeah.
It was like there was no ecstasy or MDMA or any of that stuff. It was kind of like
Psychedelics.
mushrooms, a little bit of weed. The weed was like really shitty,
Yeah.
or yeah, it was like really dirty brown weed.
Yeah.
Where it
Brown
was
frown. I
coming
remember
from.
brown frown.
Seeds, you had to pick seeds out of it and
Yeah.
shit. So like, there was a lot of like interstellar, travel and communication and like insight, and like, for me, that it's definitely been like, I've definitely had a lot of visions. I don't
Mm.
know if per se like actual extraterrestrial connection, but I think I've been able to see things where I definitely feel like there's a lot beyond what we think is our material world, or our three
Hmm.
dimensional world or whatever there is. That there's a lot of energy moving around and shifting around us, and I think there's something going on around us all the time, and we're just not aware or tapped into it. So maybe we do things like ayahuasca or LSD, and we're able to open up our perception of what's really going on. So yeah, I mean, I'm not
Yeah.
I'm not surprised or disbelieve that there's extraterrestrials running around and that there's been presence here. I mean, I've been to the pyramids in Egypt, and I've seen some of these things that just
Yeah.
seem it seems to make sense that there's extraterrestrials involved. I mean, even with doing ayahuasca, it's like
Yeah.
I don't know how does how do the indigenous in the jungle figure out of like, what is it, 6,000 plants or something, that if you put two together, that
Exactly.
it creates this like this medicine that takes you like to another, realm and
Yeah.
dimension. And how does that happen? Like, where did that information come from? God, aliens,
Right.
something like that? I just don't believe that these guys in the jungle figured out these two plants,
No.
the magnitude that this has.
No, that's. I wonder what if there was a way to calculate the odds. I mean, a medicine that puts you in touch, with not only the bowels of this planet, but also your connection to this planet and to yourself. And whatever your intention is, when you go into the ceremony, you will see it play out. The medicine will show you and bring you where you need to go. And how can that be? How can you're drinking a substance that was mixed from the earth, and then don't get me wrong, there are people who are sitting there who are not having much of an experience, and this is even crazier. There are some people sitting there like, I want my fucking money back. All I'm hearing is people throw up, and I'm sitting here. And then there are other people who are having, I mean, this vision and this journey that is just, but the word profound could do it no justice, because what they're experiencing is just on another level, and it's like, how can you, there is definitely an intelligence involved in the creation of that and the ceremony behind that. And I think behind psychedelics in general, psychedelics, I believe, are here for humans, to help the human separate from the ego and realize what this connection is that we have to each other and to the cosmos and to our beautiful planet. I believe that, and don't get me wrong, most of the time people are using the psychedelics for escapism or other recreational uses, and that's fine. But I think the reason why they're here deep down, is for that, for self-discovery.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's good. Some psychedelics or psychedelics can be good in the sense, at least, to be able to step outside of yourself and see yourself, to be able to understand, like, what energy looks like. There's something beyond your own
Mm-hmm.
trauma, right? Your own sort of like your own ego itself. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's the thing, is I think growing up as a kid, when we were doing psychedelics, there wasn't really a need to escape. We were just like
Yeah.
recreationally having fun and extending things, in a capacity that it's never really, at least for me, been an escape, but I
Yeah.
certainly think it's important. I don't know. I couldn't imagine being an adult at this point in my life and like trying a psychedelic for the first time. Like, I don't even know what that's like.
Yeah, me
So
either.
it'd be like having your first alien encounter at 40 or something, I don't know. And
Yeah, it would be
no one, no. I mean, I'm sure there are aliens, like, have I seen one in my bedroom? Maybe, but I've seen lots of things.
Yeah.
I've
No.
done these ayahuasca ceremonies where like I'm seeing all kinds of crazy shit.
Yeah.
It's super colorful and pretty amazing.
Yes. Oh, I know exactly what you're talking about. um and
But I've never
it's,
purged. I don't know. I've never thrown up. I've never purged. I mean, maybe
wow.
I purged when I was very, very young, doing something like peyote, but
Yeah,
I've never purged on ayahuasca. I've done ayahuasca a bunch of times.
I really didn't think that
And
that
my
I
visions have been
was.
insane. Like, I've had it's like, some people are like, oh, you should purge. You should. I was like, listen, I'm down to purge.
Yeah,
I don't
exactly.
give a fuck. I don't give a fuck. But it's like, I just don't. My body doesn't have a need to purge
Right.
that particular medicine that is hitting my brain like it's insane. Like, I'm seeing all this shit. It's
Yeah.
super visual.
Yeah. And that's the thing. That's the other thing, people don't understand, that spirituality doesn't have a face. You know what I mean? Like, these experiences don't have necessarily a template, right? They're different for everyone. And some people can purge the whole time and other people don't need to. It's not necessarily part of the experience, but it can be. It just depends on the person and
Mhm.
the medicine, the way it interacts with the body. Sometimes purge, and then they have the most fucking intense, profound, experience afterwards, because the medicine
Mhm.
can then act, and function more easily. And
I
other
think
people.
too. I think with DMT and ayahuasca, it can really stimulate repressed memories,
Yes.
right? So I think some people that have some real repressed trauma, it kind of brings that to light for them or brings it to the surface, and so maybe the ayahuasca ceremony, for at least for me, it's not. It's like for me, it's like super. It's just a whole nother beautiful thing with
Yeah.
colors and visions, and like there's just so much visual hallucinations generally. But it's not generally super, like there's not this weighted emotional sort of trauma that comes to the surface. But
Yeah.
those aren't things I really experience, so I don't have repressed memories that I'm not remembering or seeing. So yeah, if you do something like DMT, it might trigger the memory in your brain that you've repressed somehow, and so now you're remembering, oh, that happened to me, like this is something
Mm.
that I was victim of or whatever. And so that
Yes.
they're working through that then, right, in the ceremony.
Exactly.
Maybe that involves purging too.
And I think it's all related. I was a little, and it's funny because I'm like a fucking poster child for psychedelics, in general. I've done them a lot from the time I was young, and I was like apprehensive about ayahuasca, and I had a dear friend and teacher, the woman who named this podcast actually, and she did it in Mexico, and I was like, "What? How did you?" She's never done any kind of psychedelics before, but she wanted to do this, and she said, "Faust," she said, "the more work that you've done on yourself, the more bliss you're going to find." And I was like, "Okay, sign me up." That's all I needed to hear. I was like, "Okay, I can do this. Yeah, this is something I want to do."
Yeah.
And it was
Well, I think
amazing.
because it's not used recreationally as much, people have like less exposure to it. There's such a reverence for the ceremony of it. I think, at least in my own experience, I see people are more hesitant or more afraid or
Yeah,
uncertain of like what that experience is like. But it's like, oh wait, but you do LSD and you've done mushrooms and all these other things. Like,
yeah,
why not try some ayahuasca? Like, what are you afraid of? People are
yeah,
afraid of throwing up. People are afraid of, you know,
yeah,
whatever it is they're going to face. But I don't know. I've never had any sort of negative experience. Um,
yeah. I did, but it was basically anxiety about. It's a long story, but I had this. I mean, it was all self driven. Like I gave myself anxiety about what was going to happen, and then pretended like I wasn't bugging the fuck out. But I had done it. It wasn't even the medicine; it was me. And then when the
mm,
next time I went to do a ceremony, my body reminded me what I tried to forget. My body was like, we're out of here. I was like, wait, wait, we came all this way.
mhm,
And I was like, my body was like packing my clothes. And I'm like, what the fuck? What is wrong with me? And I knew what was happening. I knew it was because the last time I was at this place, I had this fucking mind blowing experience. And at the end of it, I mean, like this was just on a scale of 1 to 10. This was like a 99. In terms of like visually, and it was like I went so far out, and I knew like I was like, dude, maybe you should rein it in. And I was like, no, fuck that. That's why I came. I was like on the front of the Titanic. You know what I mean? Like it was fucking
mhm,
nuts, man. It was, but I was going like getting further and further away from my body. And part of me was like, maybe you should reel it back in a little bit, and the other part of me was like, no, fuck that, we're going all the way. And I had a lot of trouble kind of getting back into my body, like
mhm,
getting anything to work. And then I started to bug out because like I couldn't make my eyes work. I couldn't make my ears work. I felt like I was hearing
mhm,
everyone talk on the planet at the same time, and I was like, fuck, I broke something.
mhm.
If I could go back and do things over, I would have just sat and just chilled out. You know what I mean? Instead of starting to let the fear get so great. And I,
So what happens? So you trying to bounce? You're packing your shit up. You're like, I'm out of here.
so what happened was the next time. uh, right as we were about to start the ceremony, I started bugging out. I started having anxiety, and I was like, I was
Oh, before you taking the medicines, you hadn't even
right,
taken
and it
them.
was because the last time I was there, the tail end of this incredible experience I had was like I turned it turned into, a mini nightmare, because when the ceremony was, I guess it was starting to end, but I couldn't get back into my body. I couldn't
Hmm.
get anything to work. Like, and I was like, fucking, I had come to the awareness that I was like basically drenched in sweat. I wasn't sure where my shirt went. Um, I wasn't, and I couldn't get my body to move. I couldn't get my eyes to work. I couldn't get my ears to stop processing all these sounds. And I was like, and I couldn't tell if the ceremony was over because I couldn't see. I was foobarred. I was foobarred. I mean, I went from having like the most fucking remarkable time that I think anyone could have on ayahuasca, or maybe that anyone has had on ayahuasca. This is how great it was. To like, oh fuck, you know what I mean? Like, now what am I going to do? Like, and so I was trying to be cool, but I mean, it looked probably a little bit like Will Ferrell in Old School when he shoots himself with a tranquilizer and then tries to like go around the party, and he's like, "Yeah, babe," and he can't. He's just tripping over everything. He can't get anything to work, and eventually just falls over. I probably looked a lot like that, minus all those clothes, and covered in sweat. Because I think I tried to get up, and it was a mess, dude. It was a mess. Like, you know, I think the ceremony wasn't even over. It was, and anyway,
You're just tripping. You're just tripping. You're tripping. And like, I mean, I
yeah,
don't know. Yeah, there's like, if I'm in the middle, if I'm in a heavy, state with, or we call it the force, right? When you're like in the
yeah,
force, I generally can't be walking around.
that was my first mistake,
That's for sure. That's for sure. I mean, like, I don't even know like where I would go, like which direction I'd even move in.
dude.
I
And I
think.
didn't either. I don't know what I was doing or what I was thinking. I thought the ceremony was over, and it turns out it was still going on, but I couldn't see a thing, and I thought the room was empty because it was black, and I was like, everyone's
Right.
gone. I was just, dude, it was a mess. It was
Right.
crazy.
Yeah.
I remember this. One of the guardians, one of the angels came up to me, and they were like, "No, the ceremony is not over." And so I'm hearing all these voices, and then this one comes in like a fucking megaphone speaker, and I was like, "It's fucking over for me, man. It's fucking over for me." I was like,
It's over for you.
yeah, I
I'm
was
doing a ceremony this Saturday actually in Miami. Have you ever done acacia? Acacia.
no, but it sounds familiar.
I haven't sat in ceremony with acacia. I've taken it like as a tincture or whatever, but acacia, in my understanding, it's a plant. Um, apparently, like the Egyptians used to use it. Um, it's been grown, I think, all over the world. It's used in ceremony. It's different than ayahuasca. Apparently, it's much lighter and a
Oh,
different
cool.
sort of beautiful experience. But like apparently, like Moses was, there's been rumor that he was speaking to an acacia bush, the burning
Oh, okay,
bush
that's right.
was acacia, and so this plant, has a lot of history apparently in like Israel and Egypt. But
Very
I'm
cool.
sitting in a ceremony on Saturday with that
Oh, that's
particular
awesome,
plant.
man.
We'll see how that goes.
I'll
Yeah.
be in Florida on Saturday too. Yeah, more in the Boca Raton area, but yeah, for the holidays.
Okay.
So that's cool, bro. That's
You're doing
awesome.
Thanksgiving. You're doing Thanksgiving in Boca
Yeah,
Raton.
yeah. I'll be in that area, so I know what you're up to. If you're there all
Yeah,
week,
let's know. I'll be in Miami for a week.
oh,
I'll be
cool,
with
man.
Tiffany there. Tiffany lives there, so we'll be there for a week.
Awesome, dude. I won't be too far from Miami. Maybe I'll shoot you a text and see what you guys are up to.
Yeah, let me know.
That'd be cool, bro. Um, but so listen, tell everyone where to find you, at your website, and if you have a social media you want to tell everyone about, so that people know
Yeah, I
what
don't. I
you're
don't
up
have
to.
a personal. I don't have a personal Instagram, but my Instagram is Zen Arts. So just at Zen Arts, and then our website is zenartsla.com. So zenartsla.com. You can find me there.
Awesome, awesome, and check out the website. Check out some of the incredible pictures and look at what he's been creating, I encourage you, because it's just it's incredible work. And dude, I'm gonna shoot you a text when I'm in Florida to see what you're up to, bro.
Yeah, let's do it. Love to see
Um,
you.
but listen, have a great time on Saturday night. That sounds amazing. I'm jealous. And dude, we got to we'll make a plan. We got to get together again soon, bro. It was so great to meet you
Let's do it.
and hang out with you, bro. I
You
had so
too.
much fun, man. It was like
Me too.
it was really cool, bro. And I'm so glad to get a chance to talk to you a little further and hear about where you come from and how you got to be who you are. It's awesome.
Thanks, brother. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome, bro. I'll be in touch. I'll let you know when we're gonna air this episode. And listen, you have a fantastic holiday, brother. And I
You
will talk
too.
to you very soon.
All right, brother.
All right,
Thanks,
brother.
man.
Take care. Thank you.
All right, thanks. Bye bye.